Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Friday night on Paranormal Review Radio with me, Anthony Agati, and my lovely co-host, Luci Liefried.
Hi, Anthony. Hi, everybody. Okay, we have a great show tonight, but first, let's share how you can participate in tonight's show. As always, our phone lines are open, so give us a call. The number to call is 661-244-9831. Now, if we don't get to you right away, please stay on the line, and we will get to you as soon as we can. Also, our chat room is open. Feel free to interact with us or make new friends. And lastly, our Facebook page, Paranormal Review Radio, has some great follow-up information and daily paranormal news and fun insights. So come on by and like our page. Okay, Anthony, let's start the show.
Demonic possession is a very rare phenomenon. Although it happens more often than people realize, it is still considered rare. Science has swept away much of what used to be considered demonic possession. Diseases of the mind such as schizophrenia, Tourette syndrome, and various forms of psychosis were once regarded as surefire signs that diabolical infestation was taking place. But in today's world, demonic infestation, oppression, and possession still takes place, and there is still a need for exorcism regardless of all the scientific research. Bishop James Long is a familiar name in the field of demonology and angelology. Since the age of 5, Bishop Long knew he would be the man of God and church, and at the age of 9, Bishop Long became increasingly interested in demonology and has since continued the study and the fight for good to win over evil. You may be familiar with his appearance on Ghost Adventures, on the Bobby Mackey's episode, and also with his support group called Paranormal Clergy. Bishop Long has also written a book called Through the Eyes of an Exorcist. He has completed dozens of exorcisms over the years and dedicates his mission to help fellow paranormal investigators and others in need of his help. Luci and I are extremely excited and blessed to be able to talk to Bishop Long tonight. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Bishop James Long to the show. Good evening, Bishop. Thank you for taking time to come on our show. How are you tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Great, just great. Thank you.
Great.
Hi,
Thank
Bishop.
You.
Thank you so much for coming on our show. I wanted to start off by going back to your childhood. Now, I've read that you first learned that you wanted to be a priest at the age of 5, and you became interested in demonology by the age of 9. How did you come to that decision at such a young age?
Well, I tell you, it was. I knew that at a very, very early age that burning desire to be a priest. I didn't know why. I really didn't know what it meant. I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I remember being in kindergarten, and I remember, my mom asking what we did for school. And I told her, and the teacher asked what we wanted to be when we grew up. And we were in church, and she said, well, what did you tell her? And I pointed at the priest, and I said, I want to do what he does. And that was a very profound moment for me, because I still remember that time. I still remember that moment, me pointing at that priest and saying, I want to do what he does. And from that moment on, that burning desire has never left. If anything, it's grown deeper and developed a real passion to the point of really falling in love with my ministry, with my calling. And so it's just grown, deeper into what I am today.
Wow. That's beautiful. Now, I do understand that you're an Archbishop of the Old Catholic Church. Can I ask, is that the same as Roman Catholic, or is it completely different?
It is not Roman Catholic. No, I studied for the Roman Catholic priesthood for quite some time, and it was probably the best experience that I had in my life. It was a wonderful formation, both spiritual and academic formation, and I tell you, it was just tremendous, truly tremendous. But the Roman Catholic Church and the Old Catholic Church are different in that there was a split, it began in the 1870s, and formally in the 1890s over papal infallibility. So we do not believe that the Pope is infallible. And so there was a split within the church, and so we are not under Rome's jurisdiction. And now there are, within the Old Catholic Church, there are different jurisdictions. There are some Old Catholics that are very conservative. There are some that are very liberal. So some will ordain women, and some will not ordain women to the priesthood. And so it really just depends, of course, the jurisdiction in which you're under, in which you're I guess a participant, whether it be a priest or whether you go to one of the churches. So there are some very traditionalists. There are some that are not so much. So it really depends. Even in the Old Catholic Church, it's very, I guess, some people would call it very diverse.
Mm-hmm. So how long and where did you study to become an exorcist?
Well, one thing that people don't quite understand is when I began at 9 years old, I had a deep passion to study demonology. Now, at that time, I had no idea what that meant. I knew that at 5, I wanted to study, I knew that I wanted to be a priest. And at 9 years old, I knew that I wanted to learn the opposite of that. And again, I didn't know what that meant. I had no idea. The terminology, I didn't understand, but I knew I had the desire. So I began to study anything, angelology. I began to study Lucifer. I began to study the belief on hell. And I've always, all throughout my life, I've always been the type of person that liked to read and liked to study and liked to absorb information and analyze information. I've always been like that. And so that desire began to grow. And so why? I don't know. I can't explain the desire. I just knew the desire was there. Now, I went to a Roman seminary, and I studied, again, for the Roman Catholic priesthood. I will not divulge the information as far as my mentor. And I'll tell you why. When I first came on the paranormal community scene, I thought people would be open, and they would be very fine. That's great that we have a priest that's going to help us. I then delivered the people who ordained me to the priesthood, and then eventually consecrated me to the episcopacy. And I have never seen the vile, venomous, disgusting attacks that occurred to these innocent human beings, the lies that were spread against these innocent people who did nothing but ordain a priest, a person who had a love and calling to ministry. I had no idea. I absolutely had no idea what to expect. And when I went on to MySpace at the time, and I published the information on who ordained me, I thought, well, that's the right thing to do. Show my lineage, so the apostolic succession, so people can see it.
Right.
It was venomous. Venomous. The people, the hate calls. People showed up at this man's parish and harassed him. They didn't even know. They didn't even know my ordaining bishop. Didn't even know him. And just because of hatefulness, they did this, and they didn't even know me. These people had no idea who I was. but just because of hatefulness. And so I have learned a very valuable lesson at an early age when I got in the field to be very cautious.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. Okay, so before we get into what we titled the show for tonight, Demonic Infestation, Oppression, and Possession, I think we should lay the groundwork first. So my next question is simply, is hell a literal physical place?
Hell, this is what hell is. Hell is, many people think of the wailing and gnashing of teeth, as Scripture says. But when you think of hell in the seminary, and this is what the seminary teaches, and this is what I believe, hell is the complete absence of God.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about that for a second, it's the complete absence of God. Now, if you take God completely out of the equation, then it's total hopeless, absolute hopelessness, utter despair. That is hell. With no hope, that is hell.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about hell, we should also talk about the devil. And I have a question that I've always wanted to ask a man of the cloth, and that is, why does God allow the devil to exist?
The same way that he allows evil people to exist. God, we'll never understand the magnificence of God. We'll never understand the reasoning behind God. We'll never understand God's decisions, nor should we ever try. Because every time we say God is this or God is that, we're wrong. God is love. No, he's more than love. God is perfect. Nope, he's more than perfect. So no matter what we try to label God is in our vocabulary, God is much greater than what we can describe. God allows people to exist and evil to exist for the same reason that we have the choice to refuse evil and to accept God's grace or reject God's grace, a free will. We have to remember angels fell because they freely chose to fall. Freely chose. Now, we have a God who has created everything. Everything. Not just a few things, but is the ultimate creator of all things. The ultimate creator of angels in which they choose to enact their free will to fall. In other words, when did they fall? They fell because they weren't going to serve mankind. We're creating the image of God, not angels. People need to always remember that. Now, angels are not, I'm not implying that angels are inferior, but we are created in the image of God. And so angels refuse to serve us, refuse to acknowledge that we were created in the image of God. And so they chose to fall. They chose to reject us. They chose to reject God. So just as God is not going to squash those angels who reject him, just as he will not squash his creation who rejects him, us. You know, how many mothers and how many fathers out there who truly love their parents unconditionally, and their children continue to hurt them over and over and over and over, and yet their parents continue to show unconditional love over and over and over.
Right.
Well, if the parents, if human beings who are sinful and who have fallen, if we do this to our own offspring, well, wouldn't you expect the same thing for a God who has so much more love than we can possibly imagine to do the same for us?
Okay. So with that thought in mind, do you have an opinion as to why evil continues in this world? I mean, basically, why is there evil in the world?
Free will. You know, it is free will. People can freely choose to do evil. They can freely choose to do good. And it's as a minister, it's always one of those things. Why is there evil? Why did bad things happen to good people? And there's always those battling questions that we learn in the seminary. And an old monk always so, when we fought, we had this big argument, why do bad things happen to me? It's not fair and all this. And an old monk finally said, that's enough. The question should be, when bad things will happen to good people, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to say when bad things will happen to good people? We're living in a world where we automatically assume that for some reason, because if you're living a good life, that bad things won't happen. Well, that becomes prideful. And we have to be very careful, because we're living in a world where it's very imperfect. We may be wonderful human beings. We may be almost live saintly lives, but we can't control the weather. And God forbid, in Louisville, there's tornadoes, it seems like almost every other weekend. And we have to acknowledge the fact that when those things do occur, when they will occur, that's when our faith needs to be strong. And that's when God will pull us out. That's hope. That is hope. That is God's presence. And listen, I've been there. I've been through, and I'm not just preaching here. I've been through hell. Not literally. I'm talking. I've been through the despair. I've had my hard times in life. It's not been a perfect road for me. It's been very challenging at times. This road that I have chosen to take the old Catholic Church way versus the Roman Catholic Church way, if I had been a Roman Catholic priest, let me tell you something, I would have gotten a car, I would have gotten a stipend, I would have gotten retirement, I would have gotten insurance, I would have gotten a house, I could have gotten a rectory, I would have gotten food, I would have, all these things, I would have had no problems at all. All the necessities of life would be taken care of. I would never have to worry about those things at all. I wouldn't have to worry about the electric bill. I wouldn't have to worry any of that stuff. But I have chosen to take a path in which every single bill that comes in, I have to pay. I don't get a stipend. I don't get insurance. I pay ministry out of my own pocket. I support my ministry through my own money.
Wow. Wow, Bishop. I mean, that's truly an eye-opener. I never knew that was the huge difference between the two churches, and thank you for sharing that. I actually wanted to go a little twist on this interview tonight, and I'm a big horror movie fan, and I've watched, I think, almost every exorcism movie that's been made or worth watching, like The Right Exorcism of Emily Rose, and recently The Devil Inside. How true to real life, and if you've seen any of these motion pictures, how true to real life are these movies?
The Right is very, very, very similar. I've had several conversations with Father Gary Thomas. Father Gary, of course, the movie is based on his life. And The Right is actually very, very similar. The Right, when it depicts I tell you, beautifully, on what oppression really is like, what an exorcist undergoes. If you really go through, when I went in there, I didn't need to see possession. I didn't need to see that, because I already know what possession looks like. So for me, I didn't want to go in to see another movie about possession, because I've seen it. What I wanted to do is, did they get the oppression stage right? Did they really show what oppression is like under the perception of the exorcist? And they did a beautiful job with that. So if next time you watch the movie, think of it through the eyes of an exorcist. Look through the exorcist's eyes, and maybe from his perception under the stage of oppression, and it'll give you a whole new perspective on the movie. And I thought it was brilliantly done, and I think they did a very good job displaying or portraying actually what actually does occur during a true exorcism.
How many exorcisms have you completed in your experience?
26, and this is the solemn rite. Now, 26, where the solemn rite is different than the minor rite of exorcism. Now, I want to warn everybody, there's a lot of people popping out now claiming to be exorcists. Be very cautious about this. These people have had no training whatsoever, no seminary training at all, none. And yet, all of a sudden, now they're exorcists. This is a real problem. This is a major, major problem. I spent 6 years, actually, almost wasn't far at all from the diaconate ordination of the Roman Catholic Church. This is my whole entire life has been studying, has been devoted to this. So be very cautious about people who have never spent a day in the seminary at all. They've had no formation, none. Now, they don't understand the terminology. The minor rite of exorcism, some people I heard this one person call it a smaller rite, and I couldn't believe it. The minor rite of exorcism, of course, is different. And so the minor rite of exorcism is, I've performed several, many of those. The solemn rite is, of course, is the ritual in which one is possessed.
Now, when you mention the number 26, that's not just the number of exorcisms, I'm assuming. Is that the number of people that you helped, and then I'm assuming numerous exorcisms occurred with each of these cases?
Oh, sure. That's 26 people, and with those 26 individuals, they've had to undergo several, multiple exorcisms, because there were cases, that were very intense, and some of them are difficult to speak about, and so, but because they become, I think, probably one of the most emotionally, and I talk about it sometimes, is there was a 68-year-old woman, and she was it was a terrible case. She was an incubus case. We actually have a video of her sleeping, and you actually see the bed sheets rising. You see the bed sheets rising and going down, and rising and going up, and rising and going up. And so you see this thing inside of her bed. And she describes them as bed walkers, and she was like a grandmother. I mean, she loved people. And so when I got involved with the case, she was on life support, and she would describe it to me as, are there children listening? I don't want to. I'm trying to.
I don't believe there are children listening. No.
I'll be very sensitive. She described as, I'll just put that she was ripped apart on both orifices, below, and it was medically verified, and she described this as plungers, and it was terrible, and there were many times she would feel like it was violently pinching in those areas, and she would scream in pain. So she couldn't drive anymore, and so we worked. Yeah, I'm sorry.
How long were you with this woman in this case?
A year and a half, almost 2 years.
Wow.
Did
you finally succeed in it, or was it sort of terminated in other ways?
By the time that we had finished, she was no longer being sexually assaulted. She no longer felt the bed walkers anymore. She described them as 3 bed walkers that she would actually feel. She would describe them as like animals walking on the bed, and then they would actually touch her, and she could feel them touch her. And so that stopped, and of course, but all the attacks, the physical attacks, the sexual assaults, etc., that all stopped. And when she got closer to the end of her life, then she reported that she could feel just the bed walking again, but then not long afterwards she passed. So for a year of her life, she actually was completely free from the sexual assaults. Now, I want to say that when you're talking about incubus and succubus entities, they do not physically, all right, there is no physical actual acts of adult behavior. Okay, so I'm trying to be very respectful in case there are any children listening. So there is no actions occurring. What it is, it's actually a manipulation of the muscles. So a demonic entity will manipulate those muscles to make it appear that something is occurring. And what happens is the incubus, when the person begins to say, stop, that's it, enough, then it becomes violent. Then the muscles become so manipulated that it becomes violent. And then it no longer becomes pleasing, it becomes a violent attack on the person.
Right. Now, we've been talking tonight, and you've mentioned earlier when you were talking about the movie The Rite, about oppression, and, we're talking about possession here and everything. And basically the title of our show is Demonic Infestation, Oppression, and Possession. But in sort of layman terms, or simply put, what's the difference between the three? Or is there a difference between the three?
Oh, God, yes. There's a huge difference between the three. When you're talking about infestation, oppression, and possession, the difference, of course, ultimately leading up to possession. Infestation is the beginning stages. So, the stages, and it's really important because first of all, if as an investigator, and then as clergy, as an exorcist, I always have to find out what caused the infestation in the first place. I could go in and perform the minor rite of exorcism, for example, all day long. I could perform 1,000 of them in one particular building or home, but unless I find out exactly what has occurred, why the infestation in the first place, then it's just going to be a cycle. It's just a constant cycle. So I need to find out what's caused it. Then what happens, let's say, for example, someone provokes, or someone has, invited the entity to attach itself to maybe an investigator, brought it home, attach itself, or whatever. Then there's an infestation. Now, there are several signs of infestation: knockings, bangings. Religious objects could be thrown, desecrated. Animals are spooked, very scared. There is foul smell, odor, really horrible, rotten. It smells like rotten flesh. This is true demonic. This is true demonic here we're talking. And now, of course, then we get into oppression. Oppression is a very detailed stage, and because then it begins to interact with the victim, and on a psychological, physical, spiritual, and perhaps even on a sexual nature if it's incubus and succubus. And ultimately on the oppression stage, and there are several levels of oppression. Oppression is very, very detailed. The whole purpose of oppression is to break the intellect and will down of the individual, of the target. And ultimately it's breaking the intellect and will of the entire family, because it's breaking the whole entire family down, but the person who is the target is isolating themselves. They're seeing things, they're hearing things, interacting with them. It's their intellect. It's making them believe that they're crazy. They truly believe they're going nuts. So they believe this. And their will, they just can't take it anymore. They've broken the person, they've broken their will down. They can't take it. And the reason being is because once the person is broken on the intellectual level and on the will level, they give up possession.
Several well-known paranormal investigators have claimed in recent years that, number of possessions are on the rise. Do you think the number of demonic cases has in fact risen?
I have seen people report that demonic cases are on the rise. I have not seen, evidence to support that, that would prove that, no.
Here's a question that may hit sort of both sides of sort of what you encompass, working within the paranormal field and being a clergyman. Do you feel that paranormal investigators sort of may be to blame for, maybe the increase in possessions or oppressions or infestations mainly due to the nature of the business?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
I've just thought of this question earlier this week, and, when I was reading upon how paranormal investigators are saying that there's a rise in exorcisms and a rise in possessions, I just thought, you know what, could it be that sort of the lack of knowledge that some of the paranormal investigators out there may have? You know, there are some groups of folks that, you know, they watch the television and then they, you know, they'll book a trip and they'll go and do it on their own without any education at all, or any, you know, prayers or anything that they take into effect or take into account. Do you think because of this growing number of groups and investigators that don't self-educate themselves could possibly be lending to a possible rise in possessions and oppressions that may happen to them or folks that they're with, just due to the nature of the business, going out there and quote-unquote paranormal investigating? Do you think that may be true?
Well, one thing, in my personal, you know, from my personal perspective, is I think that they're right in that there are many people performing rituals in which they have no business performing. That is true. I am seeing this far too often, and it seems like every paranormal group has a demonologist now, and it's almost as if they read a book and now they're demonologists. And one thing in the paranormal clergy is we created our own definition of demonology. And it's very important to understand that demonology is a calling. Demonology has nothing to do with paranormal. We've said this. I have said this from day one when I've stepped foot in the field a long time ago. Demonology is not paranormal. Demonology is theological.
Right.
And the paranormal community has got to leave it alone. It has nothing to do with the paranormal community. So the problem is you have people who have no theological background at all, who say, well, it says in Scripture that I can be, if I'm a Christian, that I can pick up and I can cast out demons. Well, but it also said in the other part of Scripture that Jesus breathed the Holy Spirit upon his disciples, and then he said, go cast out. That's called ordination. See, they keep forgetting that. They don't say, they're just taking bits and pieces out. Jesus breathed the Holy Spirit upon his disciples, then he said, cast out demons. And it's very important. In ordination, we have a lot of people now who are going online and pushing the ordination button. You can get ordained now online and performing exorcisms. There's somebody now who's going around and he's displaying his exorcist certificate that he bought for $65 online.
There's actually, I think in recent months, maybe it was no more than 6 months ago, I think I heard on the news that there's these 3 teenage girls who now are considering themselves exorcists and going around. I can't even fathom that. I don't understand where the parents are, number one, and number two, how could they even possibly know what could be going on in the world of demonology and that boggles my mind.
The parents are Bob Larson. That's the parent. The Bob Larson is the one who goes around on the TV shows and who thinks everybody's possessed. And you can pay $9.95 online right now on his website, and you can take a test online, and you too can see if you are possessed.
It's ridiculous.
And you see, that's how absurd it is. It's gotten to a point where it's like, really, seriously? Now we're taking tests online to see if you're possessed, and it never stops. And we have a person who there's a person running around the paranormal field who was a former Satanist, who is now a priest and performing exorcisms. How does that work?
Oh, God.
How does that work exactly?
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
So it just
doesn't make sense.
No, it does. It does not. But it just. But you just have to say, okay. You just keep going and educate people. But I always tell groups, educate yourself on it, and that's fine. But when you come across a case that's truly demonic, do one thing: leave it alone. Leave it alone. Contact the paranormal clergy. I started the paranormal clergy a long time ago, and registered the paranormal clergy a long time ago. Just contact us. That's what we're here for. And so let us deal with the demonic cases. Don't put your groups in danger. Let us help you.
That's one of the reasons why Luci and I have started this radio show. It's to educate people out there who may not realize what they don't know, and to have guests on like yourself. I think everyone out there should be privileged enough just to be tuned in, just to listen to what you have to say, and just take that to heart and go forward and maybe then go back into the books and or maybe hesitate before doing something that you shouldn't be doing. That's why we're doing this radio show and having guests on like you. So again, I commend you for coming on. Thank you so much, Bishop, for coming on. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Luci. Go ahead.
No. Bishop, so as far as the education, let's take that road right now. Basically, what kind of person is actually most vulnerable to becoming possessed? I mean, how would they become a target?
One thing, that's a great question, terrific question, and I always tell people, my mentor also said this to me. One thing he said to me that I'll never forget, never. And he said, James, the closer you get to God, the harder the devil works against you. And I thought about that. And, of course, now, what I'm thinking is, in my mind, I'm thinking Mother Teresa. I'm thinking, people who are the amazing superhumans. The people that Aristotle said that we would never get to that level. We're depraved. Right. That's what Aristotle said. The majority of us are all depraved. We are never. But he says no. That's not it. The people who get closer to God are the people who love His people. And it just always rang truth with me. It's like I've never forgotten that. So the closer you get to God, the harder the devil works against you. And I think that is something that people need to really reflect on. Now, I'm not saying, understand this. Since I came on the scene in 2001, publicly, full-time, I've been, working behind the scenes, but publicly, when I said, okay, that's it. And it's the funniest thing in the world. You always hear people, well, I started in 1934. No, you didn't. Shut up. Every time you talk to somebody, they always, I started in 1870s. All right, sure you did. I started publicly with my ministry in 2001. So it's just full time. So it's amazing to hear people, talk about how they've done it for 25 years, or 30 years, or 50 years. But I'm always fascinated by that. But nonetheless, I get so many emails on a daily basis that I've actually had to ask two people to please be administrators of the paranormal clergy because it was just too much for me. I couldn't do it anymore because I've asked them to assist me on that, and then I'm also taking control of another email account. So I have basically 3 email accounts where people can contact us. And this has happened since 2001. There are so many emails that I get on a daily basis, and I've only performed 26 exorcisms. 26.
Wow.
Now, that's in, 11 years. And there have been times I've gotten over 120 emails a day, and 26 individuals, 26 people. That tells you how rare it really is. So if people who say, well, I performed 3,000 exorcisms, I'm sure you did, but nonetheless, it really is truly very rare. It does occur, but it's very rare.
Okay. So and this question, I've always thought about this. What is the purpose of demonic possession? I mean, what does the demon gain from possessing a human?
To absolutely destroy humanity at all costs. Remember, the sole purpose that the demon fell because of absolute hatred towards humanity. Why? Because humanity was created in the image of God. And therefore, they will not serve humanity under any circumstance. And so, therefore, the ultimate destruction of the human being, of the human person, of a child of God. It's a total rejection of God. So fallen angels have completely and utterly rejected God and all of His creation. So what they get in the ultimate satisfaction is the seeing what God loves the most being destroyed. I mean, if you think about it from a perspective of an evil being, I mean, one of the worst things I could possibly imagine or possibly think of is if I had a child. One of the worst things I could think of is to see my child suffer. Mm-hmm. You know, I have two dogs. I have two dogs, and these dogs are as close to my kids as they could possibly be, and they're spoiled rotten. And it would destroy me to see anything happen to them. I can't imagine if I had children and see something bad happen to my kids.
No, I agree. Can demons unite, and can they concentrate their efforts to influence society?
Oh, God, they can influence society, and they most certainly can. I mean, you know, that is such a great question, and my answer is very, very simple for you. Turn on the news.
Yes.
It just, I am so tired of, in Louisville especially, I don't know, turning on the news and seeing another person being shot, and or just enough is enough. The greed and the money and power and drugs. I mean, the seven deadly sins. I mean, you see them. I don't want to be cliche, but my God, if they can manipulate anything, they can certainly manipulate the seven deadly sins.
Now, Bishop, when you've done your exorcisms, and I know, and maybe this may be cliche or a false statement, but when you're doing an exorcism, I believe you're not supposed to show fear or have fear within you while performing it. But have you ever been afraid while doing an exorcism?
Yes.
Had it changed? Had that fear changed the way that you operated? Meaning, maybe it's sort of given you more strength to combat the evil.
Any exorcist. I hear this all the time. I hear people say, "Well, I performed an exorcism. I've never been afraid." Then you've never been in front of a demon. Then you've never seen someone possessed. I'm very afraid of the person who is possessed, and I see this body twitching, and what I see to the manipulation of the body, and I'm very afraid that this person could expire. I'm very fearful that this person in front of me has only so much strength. Now, I'm not afraid of what this demon is going to do to me, because I'm not afraid of what happens in this life, because of my faith in God is so strong, my faith in the afterlife is so strong that this life, I understand, is very temporary. I get that, and I completely believe that with every fiber of my being. But I am absolutely afraid for the person who is possessed, because I want this person to be delivered so badly, because I do not want to see the person in pain. The body can only withstand so much torture. Now, when I will tell you this, and you asked a brilliant question, and you asked, has my faith ever been strengthened during the exorcism? during the ritual, there are several times, and I'm not going to get into the ritual, although people have, unfortunately picked it up. During the ritual, cutting serpent, when you're into the class, when you're into the demands, and you make the sign of the cross, and you hold the cross up, flee band of enemies, and you see and hear this thing screech in pain. You see the multiple tones, not just one pitch, multiple, and you hear it screech in pain. The power of the sign of the cross. You know that you're absolutely standing with a band of enemies by your side. And this wretched thing, this wretched serpent, you're about to crush its head. And it knows that you're about to bind it to the cross. And it knows that you're about to defeat it. That is a humbling and powerful experience.
Wow. I got chills just by you describing that. Bishop, have you ever encountered the same demon twice?
Yes.
Or more than once?
Yeah, because what happens during an exorcism is people ask all the time, what happens to the demons after you expel them? First, it should be understood that an exorcism is just an instrument in which God is using to expel the demon from the person. The exorcist's job is to bind them to the cross for eternal damnation. That is the true torture of the demonic. So you want to bind them to the cross. Now, I will not go into the process of how to do that. So once that process is completed, the demonic has been expelled, then that's done. What happens often is if the demonic has left, or demon has left the body and has not been bound to the cross, then there are many times that you could come across, again, especially in transient possession. So the person may become possessed again. Transient possession is very common. Within the possessed state. Not very common all the time. That's not what I'm implying. But, for example, most of my cases have been transient possession, where the demonic will come in and out of the body. For Annalise McKell, Emily Rose, that was transient possession.
Now, in order to know that you're seeing the same demon again, do they introduce them by name, or is there some significant characteristics that are attributed to each that you can familiarize yourself with?
There are characteristics, and they will lie. But an exorcist who has studied angelology will know what he has to do in order to truly understand the identity of the demonic. And again, that goes down to I have to be very careful about what I say, because I think what happens is there are many people who might be listening who are, well, I'm going to be an exorcist tomorrow, so
right.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are several steps that an exorcist will do during an exorcism that will determine that process.
Well, I mean, I encourage everybody to go out there and get your book, Through the Eyes of an Exorcist. For those who are listening who think, oh yeah, I can go out tomorrow and start to be an exorcist in my group. Get Bishop James Long's book, Through the Eyes of an Exorcist. I think it's a start. It's a good book to start off with, and to familiarize yourself with the world of demons and demonology and exorcism, and then ask that question again if this is what you really truly want to do. But Bishop, I wanted to ask you, if someone does encounter what they think may be a demon, what should they do?
Contact us. Never act with a doubtful conscience. You may allow an evil to occur. Now, what that means is this. So, for example, you have a paranormal group, and you're responsible for that group, and you walk into a home and you have a doubtful conscience. You never act with a doubtful conscience, because you may allow an evil to occur. So you walk into the home, you think, oh boy, I think there's something evil here. There's something very evil here. I'm uncomfortable. You walk in anyway. It is a demonic that's present, and one of your team members get hurt or attacked, or whatever it might be. You allow an evil to occur. So never act with a doubtful conscience. You may allow an evil to occur. So what I always tell people is, if you walk in, forget the $20,000, equipment. Forget all that nonsense. And it's all fun. It's good to have. Now, look, I love to have them. I love to play with gadgets. I'm a big gadget guy. I love it. This is fun. But at the same time, the number one, the best equipment that you can possibly have is the one that God gave you, and that's your sixth sense. You don't need batteries. You don't need to recharge. You walk into a place and you say, this is not good, and you walk right back out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you listen to that sixth sense. Now, some people call it your guardian angel. Some people call it your conscience, intuition. Whatever term you want to call it, you just listen to it. The exorcist walks in. we kind of keep going, so we kind of ignore that. But for the paranormal groups, be very cautious about that. If one of your members walks in and says, you know what, guys, I don't feel comfortable here. I'm really uncomfortable. Then as a team, gather together and say, you know what, you matter, and so does this team. We leave. And contact paranormal clergy, and if we have a team, affiliate team out in your area, we'll come out and help you out. That's what we're there for.
Bishop, I just listening to you, it just becomes more apparent how serious a matter this is, and I'm hoping that our listeners do take that to heart. That this is a very, very serious issue. And it should not be treated lightly, not at all. But I do want to, can we talk about Bobby Mackey's Music World? Do you mind?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. I'm sure our listeners have seen the episode that you were on while the Ghost Adventure guys were investigating Bobby Mackey's. Well, in that episode that you were on, Aaron became what I believe to be possessed just from what was expressed, since they didn't show the actual actions of Aaron that night on TV. Now, since you were with them there, can you tell us if Aaron was actually possessed, and to what extreme?
Well, here's what I can say. Aaron and I had very private conversations afterwards. He was not possessed. Aaron was under the stage of oppression, as was Zach. There was a reason why the cameras were turned off. Now, I won't go into what happened when the cameras were turned off. But what I will say is that there were things that they did not show on that episode, and I'm glad they didn't, because it was very emotional. That place has a very strong hold on those guys, and that's why I went there with them. It was that was a very trying night for the guys. So, but it was not a possession. Both were under the stage of oppression. I believe that they would have been in some serious trouble. If they had not, they could have been in some trouble.
So you would say that they were very lucky to have you there with them that night.
They were there to, not just me. I think if they had had anybody, clergy, they were there to have clergy there. Not me, but just any a clergy. I preferred to erase James Long out of the picture. They were there. They were lucky to have a clergyman there.
Okay. Well, Anthony and I, we've investigated Bobby Mackey's twice already. And the first time that we went there, Anthony got scratched on the back of his neck. Now, at this time, another member of our team was yelling for the spirits to do something to her. But it didn't go after her. It went after Anthony. Now, why would that have happened? I mean, you would have thought that she would have been scratched and not Anthony.
It's a great question. My answer is yet. See, here's the thing. People provoke demonic entities. Demonic entities provoke back. Mm-hmm. But they provoke on their own terms, on their own times, and on their own conditions. And so they're opportunists. They're not going to provoke when you're, come on, do something. Come do something. If you're so tough, do something. And they're looking at you, and you're not aware they're looking at you, and they're saying, "Oh, we will."
Well, Bishop, speaking of Bobby Mackey's, you were there a few years ago for a paranormal conference and ghost hunt with the guys from Ghost Adventures, and also with Mark and Debbie Constantino. Now, you, from what I've learned, you had your digital recorder slapped out of your hand, and your hand was scratched. What happened that night, and did anything happen after that incident?
Yeah, well, my recorder, I was angry because my favorite recorder, the one that I used, all of that was shattered. So I got really angry because of that. I was like, so that was what I was really frustrated with. It was a force. The best way to describe it, how can I describe it? It almost felt like, have you ever seen one of those puff balloons, where they puff air? You know what I'm talking about? Where they puff. You put it in front of your face and they puff it. And, there's a lot of air that goes in front of your face. Have you ever seen one of those things?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In my hand, it felt like there was one of those huge puff of air that pushed my hand, and I felt a real hot, very burning sensation. I mean, it's just like a third-degree burn right there on my hands. And so as this the real strong puff of air knocked my hand up, and the recorder fell. And when I looked at my hand, it's just the burning, it's a scratching, burning sensation. And I knew what had happened. I think what happens is people immediately think, well, nothing can happen to me because I have the light of Jesus surrounding me. Well, that's pride. That's pride. You have to be very careful. We have to be very, very careful with that. So I always tell people, never get so, always respect the power of the evil. Now, I'm not saying respect it as in like. I'm just saying acknowledge what they are able to do. Never go into a situation and say, well, nothing could ever hurt me, because then that pride can seep in. So to kind of be cautious about that.
Now, your book, as I was mentioning earlier, Through the Eyes of an Exorcist, is a great read for those interested in learning about demonic possession and the differences between human spirits and entities. And it's a good book just to start to learn about the field. But what is the one thing for the readers out there who have read your book or who will go out and actually get it and read it, what's the one thing that you hope that the readers take from your book?
Yeah, it's a basic introduction book. And, I'm not an author. People kept constantly asking me, put a basic introduction, so I did. And I think I put something out there. I thought, okay, this is what I can do with my very, very limited time. I have since learned that there's a lot of what's called ghostwriters out there. I wish I could find a ghostwriter. If there's somebody who wants to be a ghostwriter for me, contact me, because I'm not a writer. So it's not my gifts, it's not my talents. But I tell you, these people who pull out 300-400 pages, God love them. I don't know how they do it. I bow down to them, and they're just amazing. But for me, it's a basic introduction book that for groups who are just starting, who thought, well, I'd like to pick up this book and see what it is. It's not for advanced people who've been there for years and years. It's not meant for that. It's a basic introduction of poltergeist, human spirits, demonic entities, possession, and some basic necessities that you'll need for investigation.
Okay,
great.
Excellent. So Bishop, I know I can speak for Anthony and myself that we could continue probably for another 2 hours with a ton of questions for you. But we know that you have to go, and we're about to move on to some weekly show routines and then end our show. So I really want to truly thank you for coming on tonight, Bishop. It has been an honor, and I hope our listeners were able to gain some knowledge about the world of demons and possession. Can you share where our listeners can reach you for help?
Sure, yeah. They can go to facebook.com/paranormal clergy, and they can just add us there. And if they have some problems, or they can just email us if they're having problems, paranormalclergy@yahoo.com.
Okay, excellent. Is there a website?
Yeah, paranormalclergy.com.
Okay.
All right, great. Well,
all right.
Thank you so much, Bishop, for coming on tonight. I believe you do a weekly or nightly prayer, right?
We do.
Online,
we have our radio network that we own, and the church has a radio network, and it's inspireradio.org. And every night we do compline. It's Monday through Friday, so we have night prayer at 10 p.m. And it's the same compline that I did when I was in the seminary. It's something that I love to do. So it's open to everyone, and it's our night prayer that we do. It's a great way to end the evening for night prayer. And then, of course, we have Bible study on Wednesdays, and we have a variety of shows on Sunday. We have a Paranormal Crossfire and the Sacred Division on Sunday. So that's inspireradio.org.
That's great, and I've listened to Inspire Radio many times, and great shows, great insight. Yeah, I mean, it's just full of enlightenment, and we appreciate that. So I also want to give a little shout to everybody out there, like you mentioned earlier. If there are any ghostwriters out there that want to contact Bishop James Long, reach out to him. We want to hear more from him. Maybe you'll help him write another book. So thank you so much, Bishop, for coming on. We really appreciate you taking time and coming on our show and informing our listeners and just giving us just a little bit of insight to your world and to the world of demonology and possession. So thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys. Have a terrific evening.
You too.
Thank you,
too.
Bishop.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Lucy, what did you think?
That was absolutely wonderful. I think having the bishop on and having him talk about the seriousness of this of possession of demons. I mean, truly, I don't know how many times we can say it. It is a very serious issue. I mean, it's one thing to be a paranormal investigator, but you've got to be aware that there are things out there that if you come in contact with them, they're not to be messed with. And if you truly do, to take the bishop's advice, if you come across these issues, use your intuition, use that feeling, and you need to walk away from it. If you have a problem, if there's something that's happening to you, as the bishop said, reach out to him, reach out to the paranormal clergy, and just protect yourself. Wouldn't you agree, Anthony?
I agree. This, as Bishop was saying earlier, and I've heard this many, many times, but it seems as though just some people just don't get it. This is not a game. Even just paranormal investigating, you should not be doing this for the fun of it. It is a real thing. And if you think going out and being a ghost hunter is fun and, some excitement for a Saturday night or a Friday night, yeah, it is exciting, and that's what fuels us who are true paranormal investigators, but that's not the reason why we do it. And we don't get caught up in that, that roller coaster ride and that amusement park feel, because that's not what we're doing it for. We're, as we've said before, Lucy and I are in it to find real answers. We may not receive it, we may not get it, but we're in search of it, and whenever we do find anything, we like to share it with, other fellow investigators or, other people who, may not get into that field or may not get into that world, but still want to know. we want to educate people into that matter. And if you think that being an exorcist and just being a demonologist is fun and you're going to go out there and try and do it, well, I would say a few prayers before doing that, because, again, it is not a game. And when I was telling Bishop before that I've heard about that news report about those 3 young teenage girls who are now claiming to be demonologists and exorcists, and they were on a talk show with, I think, one of the girls' father, I think, or was one of the parents on the talk show, my jaw hit the floor. I could not believe, one, that these 3 girls could honestly make that statement and say that they were exorcists, and 2, to have the parent of one of those girls on that stage, and I think it was Bob Larson, I think, was on there as well, promoting them. That's disgusting. That is literally, it is abuse, because to put 3 girls into a situation that, Bishop James Long was just mentioning earlier about that 68-year-old woman who he had to perform an exorcist on for a year and a half to almost 2 years, to put 3 girls into that mix, into that atmosphere, is completely ridiculous and is not a joking matter and is not fun and is not a laughable thing. You have to take this seriously. And I don't want to preach, and I don't want to, stand on my crate or on my, my crate here and preach to everybody. But it just, I don't understand, folks. Some people just may not get it. And the more and more shows that we do like this, I'm hoping that something sinks in somewhere to someone who may be thinking that, they can do it. I would caution you to, to really go out there and educate yourself about it. Pick up, Bishop's book and or pick up other books out there or read online. Again, it's not a joking matter.
No, they're not. They're not. So, again, I'm so honored that we did have the bishop on there. I mean, it's a subject that, like I said, we could talk for hours on this, but hopefully this gave people something to think about.
I mean, he was telling some of those stories. I got chills, especially about that one case about that 68-year-old woman. I mean, I could not imagine being him, being in his shoes, doing that. I think even with all the education I would have, I don't even know if I could actually be there to do that, because not only are you fighting a demon, you're trying to save another soul. You're trying to save another human being from the depths of demon and hell. And having that responsibility or that weight on my shoulders is, I think, worse than any, stressful job out there, I think. To have that feeling that, you've got someone's life in your hands, and in your other hand, you're actually fighting evil. I mean, that is diabolical to, no pun intended, but it is just a diabolical vision to have in my head. So,
and one thing I do want to mention. No. That's fine. One thing I do want to mention, like, how the bishop was saying that the sounds that come out. And in doing the research, I don't know, Anthony, if you came across the same thing. There is a show, I want to say it's back in 2008, that the bishop did. And he actually had a recording of Annalise Michel. And if you can find this show, everyone out there, you need to listen to it. He has a recording of the screams that are coming from this poor woman. And I will tell you, I was listening to it, and the hair on my head stood up. It is the most unbelievable, unearthly sound that I've ever heard. And this is a recording. I cannot imagine being in the presence of such evil. I mean, this is serious business, folks. It is not a game. And once you realize how serious it is and what harm can come, like he says, you have to respect this power. So that's just my little take on it. And like I said, if you can find it, I think everyone needs to listen to it.
Well, one more thing I just wanted to add on that before we change topics. When we were talking about when I was scratched at Bobby Mackey's. And then before that, he was describing the differences between demonic infestation, oppression, and possession. When he was describing oppression, it hit home for me. And Luci, if you remember, I kept telling you after I had gotten scratched and after I left Bobby Mackey's in Kentucky and flew back home, I had experienced what I still to this day think was some sort of oppression. And it wasn't, and I was able to sort of distinguish that it wasn't a possession or anything like that, but it was some sort of force that was manipulating my mind and was clouding my judgment and just, for lack of a better word, just messing with me. And the description that he was giving me, I mean, completely hit home. And it wasn't until, and we have mentioned this earlier in other shows, and it wasn't until I basically stood in the middle of my living room and just yelled out, you know, get out, get away, I don't want you here, you're not welcome. I mean, I just kept saying that over and over and over again because it got to the point, as what Bishop was saying earlier, where, you know, you literally think you're going crazy, and it gets you to the point where it then can possess you. And I felt as though that for myself, it was getting to the point, it's sort of like, you know, it's sort of that cliche thing, it was getting to the boiling point where something had to happen, either, you know, something bad or I was going to get rid of it. And luckily I was able to still have my right frame of mind and was able to then sort of, I don't know if I casted it out or whatever it was, but I was able to get rid of it because it just consumed everything. And it wasn't just me mentally. I mean, everything around me. I was having bad luck with my car, bad luck at work, bad luck with relationships, bad luck with people. It just consumed everything. And it's not the best thing to go through. And it's not a fun thing, you know. I didn't expect this to happen at all when we went to Bobby Mackey's, but luckily, and, you know, through the grace of God, that, you know, I was able to then get rid of this thing. But I got chills when he was describing that, and it sort of hit home for me. And so I just wanted to share that with you and with everybody.
Yeah, no, I remember exactly everything that you were saying after we left, and it just was, I mean, I was worried. I was definitely worried, and what happened there, like I said, I mean, it's serious. It's very serious, and I'll say it again over and over. Just please, I think everyone, if you're going to be an investigator, I think one of the most important parts, like the bishop said, of your equipment should be a prayer. You should have a prayer. You should be able to ask, you know, for the protection. Ask the angels. Trust your guides. Trust whatever. But if you come in contact with something that does not feel right, do not pursue it. Do not pursue it. Protect yourself first. There, like you said, there is a difference between the investigation and demonology. You know, one is theological and the other is something else. So, again, hopefully everybody did get some of that from this brief interview. And Anthony, I know I would love to have the bishop back again. I think you agree, don't you?
I do. And actually, Trina Morton in chat just asked a question. Do you think that it is intelligent enough to not fully possess people, but to basically get energy and such from others, since they give the tours? Yeah, and Bobby Mackey's Music World does give tours. But as Bishop was mentioning earlier, if you remember, I think it was your question, Luci, about what is the purpose of demonic possession, and Bishop basically said that it was to destroy the human body, to destroy the human race, or to destroy the person individually itself. So I don't think that they would literally stop at that stage of oppression and then not go any further. I think their main mission is to get to that end result of possession, taking over the body and then destroying it. I think it's just a matter of how much strength you have within yourself to fight it, and when and where you get that help, at what point in that whole stage from infestation to oppression and then end result as possession. where do you get that help? Where do you get that strength enough? I think it will just keep going no matter what until you fight the biggest battle of your life. So I hope that answered your question, Trina Morton.
Well, Anthony, just real quickly, do you remember when I was in that bathroom? That's literally what happened to me. Usually my energy gets drained to a point, but this was the one time that I literally had to hold on to a wall. And this occurred in that bathroom in Bobby Mackey's, and if you remember from the episode, it's the bathroom where Nick had heard noises and he ran out of the bathroom. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to go back there so badly, was to stand my ground. But when it happened to me, I had to leave that bathroom. There was no way that I was going to stay in there because it had drained my energy so badly. This was the first time that I ever felt it, and it's not a pleasant thing. Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so.
Let's get off our high horses right now.
Let's move on to something fun. Rumor has it that you might be giving something away. Is that true?
No, I'm not giving anything away. We're giving something away.
Yes, we are.
Lucy, little lucky Lucy, was able to get for our listeners a bunch of tickets. So we're actually going to be running this sort of contest for the next possibly maybe week or 2 weeks. And it is tickets for the Mid-South Paranormal Convention. That's happening in August 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So, Lucy, why don't you tell our listeners the discussion that you had with a certain person?
Okay. Well, the other night, I'm online as usual. You know me, I'm always posting, I'm always there. And I get a message from Mr. Keith H. And Keith is, for those of you who don't know who Keith is, Keith works very closely with the Booth brothers, and he is actually, let me pull up his description. He's the host of the Booth Brothers Spook series on the Sci-Fi Channel, and he actually is running the Mid-South Paranormal Convention, and he asked if we would like to give some tickets away to our listeners. And, of course, we jumped at the chance. It's the Mid-South Paranormal Convention. Like Anthony said, it's going to be August 3rd, 4th, and 5th. It's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky. And now these tickets are good for general admission on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You'll be able to enjoy many of the paranormal vendors displaying some of their newest products, their services, as well as the enormous lineup of speakers, which includes Mr. Keith H. and the Booth Brothers, Patrick Burns, Chris Fleming, Aaron Houdini, Troy Taylor. Now, some of these workshops and gallery readings are going to be at an additional cost. There's 2 overnight investigations, one to the Haunted Morrison Lodge and another one to the Old Severance Valley Church in Louisville. Now, those are going to be extra charges. But what we have is a general admission ticket, and it's for 3 days. The investigations, they run $50 a piece. But you know what? If you've never done it, you got to do this. In addition to the vendors and the speakers, the general admission tickets are also going to grant you access to the Friday night kickoff party where the Orb Tones will be playing. You're going to have some fun. You're going to have drinks, and you're going to schmooze with some of the greatest paranormal celebrities out there today. So, thank you very much, Keith, for giving us these tickets, and we really do appreciate his overwhelming generosity. The tickets are worth $45 a piece, and they are a must-have. So, we'll post the link to the conference on our page, and we'll have more info and schedule details. So, Anthony, how are we going to give these tickets away? Can you share that with our listeners?
Sure. So what we thought to do was to sort of tie this into the paranormal. And what we're going to do is give out our email address, and the 13th email that we receive, the lucky winner will get 2 tickets to the Mid-South Paranormal Convention. So the email, I'll give it out now. The email address is paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com. That's paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com. And so the contest starts right now. So the 13th emailer, since, it is an unlucky 13th, we're going to make it lucky. And so the 13th emailer will get 2 free tickets to this weekend of August 3rd, 4th, and 5th, which is a Friday to a Sunday, in Louisville, Kentucky for Mid-South Paranormal Convention. I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, there's these for those folks who have not gone to any of these conferences or conventions, it is you will have a blast at these things. They not only have a vendor showcase there where there's this huge room or auditorium set up sort of trade show style, and they'll have everybody and anybody there within the paranormal. They'll have paranormal groups. They'll have folks who have created new equipment for your group, so it could be, the newest and latest gadget out there. They've got readings, side table there. They've got aura readings, I believe they do as well. Just anything and everything. And then you've got the paranormal celebs out there that will also tour around and intermingle because they're interested as well. And so you've got that all weekend long, and then to be able to, if you're in that location, if you're in and around Louisville, Kentucky, and I know Bishop is from Louisville, Kentucky, so who knows, he may stop by. So, it not only does it have that vendor showcase, they have great speaker series sessions there where you'll be able to sit in, and these tickets are good for that. You'll be able to sit in and hear from Patrick Burns, from Chris Fleming, Chris Fleming is amazing. I mean, what was it, Psychic Kids he was on? I can't remember the channel, if it was A&E or
it was
I'm drawing a blank right now. Was it A&E?
Yes.
And Aaron Houdini, who's amazing himself, and Troy Taylor, who I've gone on one of his investigations. I think he's got a website, American Hauntings, or Bump in the Night, I think it's called, bumpinthenight.com. Troy Taylor does these amazing investigations all over the country. And, he's got stories up the wazoo to tell everybody. So, I don't know, am I leaving anything out?
Yeah, you are. Mark and Debbie Constantino are going to be there. There's actually
going
to be, yes, they're going to be there. There's going to be a Ghost Hunters International reunion because you're going to have Rob Demarest, Dustin Perry, Joe Chin, and Shannon Sylvia. They're all going to be there. Let's see, who else do we have there? Let's see. Bill Bean is going to be there. Trish and Tim Yancey, Stephen LaChance, Tiffany Johnson, Rick Hayes, Jason Gowen, Marley Gibson Burns. So it's going to be an absolute party. And another thing to remember with the convention, it is the perfect place to network. If you're a paranormal group, it gives you the opportunity to meet other like-minded people, to network, to meet other investigators, and just to have a really great time. So if even if you don't win one of the tickets and you're in the Louisville area, you really need to go to this convention. If you've never been to one, this is the perfect place to start.
Now, we've got a bunch of tickets that we're going to give away, and so tonight is the first night that we're doing this, so we're going to give away 2 tickets. Now, the winners of the tickets, each ticket holder, we were told, has to be, I think it's one per household.
Yes, it's one ticket per household.
Right. So if you and a friend want to go, you and a family member who does not live with you want to go, then this will be great for you. And we're going to be running this basically all week. So check our Facebook page also, Paranormal Review Radio. Check us out on Facebook, because what we're going to do is also do some contests on our page as well. So maybe trivia questions or something like that we're going to try and do. And then we'll probably do another one on our next week's show. Maybe it'll be a caller next week. I'm not sure yet, but we'll figure that out. So tonight is just the 13th emailer to email us at our email, which is paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com. If you're the 13th emailer, we will contact you back and give you all the details on how you can pick up your tickets, multiple, it's 2. So good luck to everybody out there.
Good luck, everyone. Okay, so now that we've done that, now let's go on to the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. And this week we have a very special fan. We have this fan. She is absolutely adorable. She has been following us. She messages us regularly. She is very, very, very into the paranormal, and she is Linda Behrens of Charlestown, Massachusetts.
Hey, Linda.
Hey, Linda. Linda she's wonderful. She likes Michael Jackson. She loves Keith Sweat. She likes hockey, puzzles, and, of course, ghost hunters, ghost adventures. And she's a fan of The Big Bang Theory. I know, Anthony, you love that show. So,
oh my God!
Congratulations.
Every night, it's either Big Bang Theory or oh my God, I can't even remember it anymore now. I'm sorry, it's been a long week. Oh.
Well, anyway,
30 Rock and Big Bang Theory are my favorite shows every night. Sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, Linda, thank you so much for being a fan, sweetheart, and congratulations. Yay!
I also want to add, Linda, if you're listening tonight, it's just so funny and so weird at the same time that Linda had asked us a while ago for an autograph, something from Luci and I don't know, I just think that's so weird. We're not celebrities, we're just, people just like you. And so when we were finally able to get together when we were in Philly, we were able to sign something. And so, Linda, you're going to get that in the mail. I'm going to send it out actually tomorrow. So you'll be able to get that, and hopefully you'll be happy and treasure it. But it's weird for me.
I think the timing was just so perfect. So, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay, so Anthony, do you have anything else that you might want to touch on before we end everything?
That's
okay.
it.
Well, that's it. Now, we've come to the end of another fantastic show. And we hope that this show answered many of your questions about the evil that exists in the world. Again, we want to thank the Bishop for spending time with us and the absolutely powerful information that he shared. Now, again, and I'm going to say it one more time, please remember that investigating is a serious thing, and it can be dangerous sometimes. So please, please heed the Bishop's advice. Protect yourself and your team before you investigate. We can't stress this enough, okay? I mean, you guys are our listeners. You're important to us. We want you to stay safe. So, Anthony, thank you so much for helping to make this show what it is, okay? And thank you to all of our fans, our friends, and family for all of your support and making this show so much fun to do. Now, if you like this show, please pass the word. We promise that we will continue to bring the best online paranormal radio. Hey, our fans deserve it. Next week, we're going to be exploring a little bit more about the demonic forces that have terrorized innocent people. We're actually going to be talking to Bill Bean. And again, Bill Bean is going to be at the Mid-South Paranormal Convention. Bill is an author. He's a teacher, deliverance minister, and an inspirational speaker. Bill is the author of the book Dark Forces. Now, we're going to be talking about the horrifying event that happened to Bill and his family and the darkness that is behind it all. Make sure you don't listen to this show alone, okay? So, on that note, dear friends, have a paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio.